And we are live, and welcome, folks, to the weekly WeAreChange broadcast. Luke Radowski out, he was in Mexico last week. Lots of interesting stuff from Mexico. I know you guys saw that preview video. We're going to be probably having the documentary coming up in the next couple weeks or so as he is at Burning Man. But I've got the next best thing here. I have got Dan Dix from Press for Truth. If you're not familiar with Dan Dix, you're really not familiar with what real alternative media is. He's been doing this for well over a decade. One of the old school OGs that has really stayed true to his message, to his truth. And you got to respect him for that. Does some of the greatest work out there. One of the guys you're going to see year in, year out at events like Bilderberg and other globalist gatherings. How you doing, Dan?
Doing very well, my friend. Thank you so much for having me. I'm here with my bestest little buddy, Kaiser Sose. Hope everybody doesn't mind. I got my dog with me, so he might interrupt, but hopefully not. But either way, I'm good, my friend. How are you?
I'm very good, and with a name like Kaiser Soze, we can only hope the Kevin Spacey side of your dog isn't taking advantage of puppies. That being said, that's a bad joke,
I know,
folks.
it used to be kind of cool, so now I just call him Kaiser So Soft.
You know what sucks about that, though, my man? The bottom line is it's an amazing movie, right? I'm a huge fan of that film, The Usual Suspects, but look who directed it. It's Bryan Singer, and who's the main guy? Kevin Spacey, given that Oscar-worthy performance. And, of course, there are other actors out there that did an amazing job. Great story. But those two are not only outed sexual predators, but they've worked together on several projects as well.
Yeah, and he even had a film release since all of this came out, and I'm pretty sure it made $126 in the box office on opening night. So it's safe to say he's done. I mean, Spacey is completely done. His career is more than over.
Well, we can only hope that. We hope there are repercussions for these types of actions. And, they're not just above the law. Because we have seen that. Singer himself is still working. He actually directed that Queen movie. It was a ghost director. They took his name off of it. But he's still working in Hollywood. And so many of these predators are still working in Hollywood. It's a huge, huge problem. Folks, we're going to be going to your super chats. Obviously, we're going to start off with John McCain. Got a lot to say about that. By the way, we're not going to be celebrating anybody's death here. I did a short video on it last night. That's not what WeAreChange is ever about. But what I am hoping is this is not just the passing of a man. This is the passing of an ideal set and an allegiance towards the deep state, the military-industrial complex, and hopefully is the beginning, the future of representatives that actually represent the people. We got one super chat already. Nicholas Peter, happy Sunday, ballers. Thank you, Nicholas Peter. I do appreciate that. It's always nice to get this kicked off. So, obviously, the mainstream media has been fawning over McCain, not only since he died, but since he announced having brain cancer, and they actually disabled the comments on articles in Fox News and others because there are so many people that are beyond what the media has tried to portray McCain as. Why don't you speak to that, Dan?
Well, I mean, they have been twisting what he is ever since he came onto the scene. I mean, I think one of the biggest accomplishments as far as the deep state is concerned with having John McCain in there was his involvement in taking part in the false left-right paradigm that is the selection process in the United States during the presidential campaign in 2008 and 2012. It was when you have a man, a war hawk like that pitted up against Barack Obama, he really played his part in ensuring, because I'm of the opinion that the deep state had their pick. Barack Obama was their man. They wanted him in there. But one way to ensure that would happen would to provide the other option is this Warhawk, old man Warhawk guy, John McCain. I mean, to me, it was obvious because I've been exposed in the false left-right paradigm for, over a decade now. But other people, don't really realize how they're being used and manipulated, and how someone like John McCain can essentially be used kind of like a puppet, kind of like a pawn in this game here, because I don't think he was actually in the running to become president. I think he was just playing his part, at the hands of the deep state to ensure that Barack Obama got in. So that's probably his greatest greatest accomplishment in the eyes of the deep state, I would imagine.
Well, I want to bring it back to where John McCain hit the national scene, because I'm sure a lot of the audience out there is probably too young to remember this, but he ran in the Republican Party primaries against George Bush, the second, George Bush Jr. This was back in 2000. This is pre 9/11. And Jon Stewart took a very big interest in him, and he was on Comedy Central almost nightly. And he became kind of like this household comedian and the only true kind of rival to Bush. He was the only other option. Now, he didn't get in, but boy, did he help promote that Iraq war. Okay? One of the big things we played yesterday was him talking about the Iraq invasion aftermath before they'd gotten Saddam Hussein, and he was still saying that they were going to find weapons of mass destruction. We were going to be greeted as great liberators. And John McCain is one of the first people to set his American foot into Syria. Okay? And we all know those pictures with al-Baghdadi and other al-Qaeda and ISIS leaders. Now, beyond that, what some people do not know is that during all of this stuff going on, there was a video that leaked. And it's never really been challenged, it's never been debunked, and it's this green screen beheading that was rumored to come from a McCain staffer. We're looking at it right now. And again, I can't say whether this is a real video or a fake video, but I know it's never been debunked, and we do know, Dan, that they fake ISIS videos. For instance, this one was so bad, it made national news all over for the fact they had 7 and 8 foot ISIS members leading what appeared to be these little people on a beach. You didn't really see their footprints in the sand. It looked highly produced. And then just today, Dan, we have this article here. Fake bombs and actors playing dead. How Iraqi spy, working with the United States government, infiltrated ISIS and scuppered their terror attacks, an act that saved hundreds of lives, but cost him his own. Now remember this actor's part. Let's scroll right down. And first they're saying he's one of the people killed in an ISIS video later. But right here is a picture of a car bombing that never happened. A fake bombing, no victims, actors coming on the scene, all confirmed. And McCain was certainly at least a cheerleader for this type of behavior. We know he had direct involvement in Syria and obviously ISIS. But that article that we started off with, a history of John McCain's calls for war. Okay? And again, we're not celebrating this man's death, but I'm pretty happy that there's somebody that's not involved in our government who has a high vocal position in the media calling for war with Iraq, with Syria, with Libya, with West and Central Africa, with Bosnia and Kosovo, with bomb, bomb, bomb Iran. Does everybody remember that little slogan?
Yeah.
We're going to bomb, bomb, bomb Iran. Is that cute to anybody? Think of
he seemed to have thought that was pretty funny, to joke around about bombing Iran. That's a testament to his character, the type of man he was.
Yeah. And Dan, we're not even done. He's called for military conflict in the Ukraine, Russia, North Korea, and even China. China. This man was a detriment not only to our society, but to the national discussion on how military force should be used. He was a war hawk in every regard. He was not a maverick. He was a man that literally today got a nice send-off in a tweet from Lockheed Martin, Dan. From Lockheed Martin. Yep. And let's not forget, those are Raytheon bombs that are hitting school buses in Yemen. We had one a couple weeks ago. We had another one this week that nobody in the mainstream media is talking about. So, in closing on McCain, because I want to get to this breaking news of the school shooting, what do you think his legacy is going to end up being?
Well, in my mind, the legacy is clear. He convinced everyone that it was a good idea back in the day. We're talking, pre-2003, to arm the Al-Qaeda rebels in Syria as a means to fight against the big bad boogeyman Bashir al-Assad, and we know this now that these guys became the ISIS that we're fighting today. So this is his legacy. He had a part in creating ISIS as we know it today, and I hope that goes down as his legacy, because that's what this man brought to the table in the Middle East, and it's important for people to understand. This is what he brought to the table. He was instrumental in creating that organization that is destabilizing the Middle East. So hands down, I think that's his ultimate legacy. That's what he's going to leave here with, in my mind anyways. That's what I will always remember John McCain for, is being part and parcel for bringing us ISIS. What a great guy that is.
And again, I'm not here to stomp boots on anybody's grave, but again, I hope that we can move on politically from this type of establishment, military industrial complex politician. Dan, your video has frozen, so I'm going to hang up on you real quick, and if you could just call me back on Skype, hopefully everything will reboot good, okay?
Okay.
All right. So Dan should be calling us back in just a moment. And I want to, move on from that into this next story, and there he is. Yes, he is good to go. Where, one of the last things that McCain did that we didn't discuss was promote this Russian narrative, Mr. Dix. In fact, he was one of the people that handed off the now infamous PP dossier. It's not a document, it's a dossier. And this guy was a huge proponent of it. He was, in my opinion, part of that Brennan crowd that was here to discredit everything Trump did. Now, that's not to say that Trump's done some awful things. He has. Look at him in Syria. Pretty bad stuff. Okay? He's not the non-interventionist.
By the way, did you know?
Go ahead.
Did you know McCain requested that Trump not appear at his funeral?
Absolutely.
And he specifically wants Obama and I think George Bush to give eulogies.
Yeah.
But
it's
Trump's
no
not
doubt.
allowed.
This guy at the end pushed this nonsense Russian narrative, and now we have more nonsense. And this is out of D.C. This is out of George Washington University, a study that is saying that Russian trolls are spreading discord and disinformation about vaccine safety online. And they specifically point to the fact that it's so wacky. It's so wacky that the people that they indicted that will never see justice or a hearing in the United States in that indictment, that had a ton of disinformation regarding Guccifer 2.0. Now, that's not to say there wasn't some real stuff in there. They like putting on. Through online personas, have now spread disinfo about vaccines online. Okay, now that's the new boogeyman. So now when I talk about the fact that I'm not too hot on the fact that they're showing Bexero commercials about meningitis B, literally probably have a better chance of getting hit by lightning, to give to your college students that are going away, oh, this is the last great thing you're going to do for Joey before he goes off into the big bad world on his own. You got to make sure he doesn't get meningitis B. And there's literally actors playing mothers wearing t-shirts, being happy, saying, I don't care how rare it is, I'm going to protect my son. Now, if I don't like that, I'm obviously a Ruski troll or agent, Dan. That's what this article is saying to me. And I think as we're seeing this, anytime you question the establishment narrative, you are going to be suspect of being under Russian influence or of Russian trolls, because it's 1967 again, and we're about to kick off another Cold War. It's the most ridiculous thing ever. We're more interconnected than ever, and they're trying to separate us more than ever and separate ideas, because they have lost the narrative through the internet. Television, people watch it, but it has nowhere near the influence it used to have. Remember post 9/11 when we couldn't wait to get a 3-minute segment on MSNBC just to talk about 9/11 truth because it was important? Why would you need that? Hundreds of thousands of people within a moment of any event are live on that scene.
Yeah, the Russians being the ones to cause everything is basically the scapegoat meme of late 2017, 2018. It's the go-to scapegoat for anybody who's exposing what's going on in these elections in the world. It's like, oh no, Russian bot, you must be working for the Russians. It's getting really, really bad. And now, of course, the vaccine anti-vax movement has kind of been, butting heads, let's say, for quite some time now. So it's no surprise to me that they're going to try to bring this narrative into that mix to try to muddy those waters. I produced a video a couple of years ago where a girl was caught here doing the same thing, just saying that her baby got, I think she said, the measles because of these anti-vaxxers. And, you do a lot of research and you find out that she worked directly for these pharmaceutical companies. And there was a connection there. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's going to be something similar coming out of this story, that there's connections to big pharma here, just trying to diminish this anti-vax movement, which has really been getting a lot of momentum in the last few years. So they got to bring in this Russians, the Russians did it meme, and it's just ridiculous. But I think people are starting to see through it.
Well, one of the other things that I thought was really interesting about this is that they made the claim that they played both sides of the field. So they had pro-vaccine and then they had anti-vaccine. So now it seems like they're setting it up that in any part of the discussion they can frame it in a way that it's Russian interference. Oh, the Russians are here again. Doesn't matter what position you take. And that kind of is likened to that indictment. What nobody wants to talk about in the mainstream media on the indictment of 12 people is they talk about them not only trying to hack Democratic documents, but also Republican ones as well. And that doesn't fit with this cutesy little narrative that the media has sold us about superstar Robert Mueller coming to save the day in a Superman's outfit, and he's taking out the bad guy, Lex Luthor, and his band of cronies, which is the most absolute. I mean, none of these guys are good guys. Let's be honest. If you look into any of these people that have millions of dollars and the type of influence that, say, even a Roger Stone has, you're going to find a crime. And if you're given special counsel and special rules and basically no oversight whatsoever, you can prosecute anybody. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I just noticed the super chat. Somebody saying, from pedophilia to vaccines, the children have to be the central focus to unite us. Side note, homeopathic over allopathic any day. Avoid chemicals. Yeah. So that's a good point. Sorry, I just didn't want to miss the super chats as they're flying by here. But yeah, thanks for that point, Nicholas Peter. Same guy as last one. All right. Thank you once again then.
But onto that point about the pedophilia and the vaccines, they're constantly trying to spread disinformation and discord that way too. In fact, Titus Frost, he is in the chat room right now. I did an extensive interview with him on the backup channel, and one of the points he was trying to make about this whole QAnon phenomenon is that once they suck so many people in, and as it's gradually revealed to more and more people as being false, you start questioning everything you've ever questioned before. And now the mainstream media is trying to associate pedogate, Hollywood pedophilia, elite pedophilia amongst the government with this QAnon thing, which is completely separate. Don't get me wrong, they've sprinkled that in there, but anybody that bought into imagination land indictments and white helmets on horses with steel missiles that were going to fly off and hit pedophiles from miles away and take down the Rothschild regime was just, listen, I want hope too. Okay, but I never bought into that Nesra garbage that they were trying to sell me post 9/11. And remember, one of the things that came out with Scooter Libby, who did do jail time, as soon as that indictment was in, people that were in the 9/11 Truth Movement started saying there was indictments on Cheney, and this was the move, and the good people in the government were going to start taking over, and we could just all sit back and everything was going to be okay. And here we are 15 years later, my man, and we're not only in Afghanistan and Iraq and Syria and Libya, but we're also in Somalia. I keep going. Those are the ones that we know about, because God knows what our deep state is doing through the Central Intelligence Agency and their assets. Thoughts, Dan?
Yeah. On the pedophilia point, Jason, do you get the feeling that they are moving into a new phase of normalizing it in society, or maybe attempting to normalize it to some degree? I don't know if you saw that TED talk where some
Hmm.
girl
Sure.
was kind of justifying pedophilia as sexual orientation. I've started to see this. I've noticed little tiny things over the last year or so, and I'm starting to realize that there seems to be an agenda here to normalize this and to bring it in and to maybe mesh it somehow with the LGBT community or something like that, to try to normalize it and say that this is something that is acceptable, or that you are a bigot if you somehow speak out against this. Are you noticing this? Because I
Well,
am.
I think in the mainstream you're correct, but unfortunately, and I'm probably going to get a lot of flack for saying this, but it's been around forever, especially in the male homosexual community. And I'm not saying that all male homosexuals are pedophiles. I'm saying that there has been lingo and slang for many, many years. Like, that's why that chicken is in there. A chicken hawk was referred to as a grown homosexual man that was going after teenage boys under the age of 16. And actually, one of the big figures of quote unquote Pizzagate, I believe it was like a big welcoming on his Facebook for a man that was jailed in those nightclub murders. Those 80s nightclub murders. They did a documentary about it called Limelight. I totally think everybody should go check it out. It's an amazing documentary. And essentially, there was a video of him when he was younger, before he was a club kid, where he was talking openly about being a chicken hawk. And they were asking about boys as young as 10. Okay? So this has already kind of been in the subculture and been accepted. So, yes, I do think there's a move amongst that, because, again, we've also seen it in the subcultures of power amongst religion, business, government. It seems to seep its way into the upper echelons of power everywhere. I don't understand it. I'd never want to abuse a child. I think it's absolutely repugnant and disgusting, and it's the issue that should unite all of us, Dan. But
Hmm.
why is it that for literally 70 plus years, this diocese that was interconnected with all these other dioceses out in Pennsylvania have now, through the Attorney General, been confirmed to molest over 1,000 children with 300 plus priests? How is that possible? How is
Yeah.
that possible if elite pedophilia rings are not a reality? When some of those people were not only shooting child porn, watching it and selling it to others, but prostituting these kids to other men. And there's a documentary series out right now called The Keepers on Netflix that highlights a very similar situation in Baltimore, where a nun was seemingly going to out this and she ended up murdered, Dan. So I'm so sick of people acting like this behavior is not real and it's not documented and it's not going on to this day.
Well, one thing I am glad about is the fact that the Vatican's involvement seems to be getting more mainstream, and it's something that you can talk about now, whereas 15 years ago it was almost on the borderline of conspiracy theory, where you talk about it, that there's pedophilia within the Vatican, people are like, oh yeah, no, I heard about that. But these things are starting to come out, and thank God, like, there's some top level cardinals within the Vatican who are starting to speak out right now, and I think this may even come down to the Pope himself, who may soon have to answer to this, because these truths are coming out. They eventually will be exposed, and it's starting to happen at the highest levels. And I'm so glad to see that people within the Vatican are finally starting to be exposed for the brutal crimes they've been doing, over the last God knows how long.
Absolutely, and I actually pointed to, when I did a piece about this, I believe it's called "The Monsters Among Us" on the main channel, how there is an article, I think from 2003, 2004, out of the L.A. Times, where an anonymous source within the Vatican said the documentation goes back thousands of years that this has been going on. Forget about 70. Let me repeat that. Thousands of years. And this would coincide with the cultures that we have seen evolve and develop, not only in the Catholic world. That the Monsters Among Us video I show you, this is in the Orthodox Jewish community. This is in the upper echelons of the Saudi Arabian community. This is going on in Afghanistan. And then it's not only going on in Afghanistan. We were talking about groups that abuse children. How about our own military? How about the fact that Abu Ghraib was outed by our own soldiers that had children illegally prisoned, raping them in front of their parents? It's not something I like talking about, but it's something that needs to be discussed. These people just gained power over them, and we know those kind of experiments. Why can't what is it? The Mill experiment? What's the experiment where we had the prisoners? The Milton experiment, right? The Milton prison experiment, wasn't that the one where basically they had students play the roles of prisoners and the guards started getting out of control because they got power hungry over time?
Mm-hmm.
You had a very similar situation. Yes. So you gave all these, a lot of these people were 18, 19, 22, 23, maybe a 30 or 30 plus year old one among them. You look at these pictures, these are young guys. You give them all this power and then all of a sudden they're raping children too. It's unbelievable. Yeah. And they've never been brought to justice. And these groups get slaps on the wrist and basically moved around or covered up. And that behavior has to stop. I'm going to go to this super chat. Remember, we're taking your super chats over here. By the way, we have a join button. Hit the join button. You get a little, who was it? Klitsch had one earlier. You get a badge. You get a little Luke emoji. I'm going to add some more emojis. But it really helps us out. We need this type of support if we're going to keep giving you, like 7 to 10 reports a week on top of all the other content that we post. So Avatar says, hey guys, happy Sunday. Glad to see you. Haven't been on person yet. And we're doing everything that we can not to be on person, to be across every platform that can reach an audience. And that's why YouTube is so important because, whether you want to say this is the public square or not, this is where the audience is. So that being said, Dan, while we were getting ready for the show, we had a tragedy happen in Florida. Why don't you give people the breakdown about what we know so far with this mass shooting in Jacksonville?
Well, so far we know that this was a gaming tournament and that the alleged shooter was actually taking part in the tournament. I believe he's 20 years old. I think he goes by the name of David Katz, and this is someone who was obviously armed at this tournament and was playing in the tournament, lost the tournament, and decided to take it out on his fellow teammates and the people he was playing against. There's video footage of some of these gamers with, the red dot showing up on their shirts because this guy had a laser light attached. So what we know now is 4 people are dead. I'm not sure if that includes the shooter himself. We do know the shooter is also dead. He killed himself, but whether or not that's included in the 4, I'm not sure. 11 people have been injured. And, we already know, Jason, where this is leading. Gun control now, hashtag gun control now is already trending on Twitter. So we know the route the establishment is going to take here. But I think it's incredibly important that people look into a number of things. First of all, so many times when we see these incidents happen, we find out that these kids were on some sort of antidepressants, some sort of SSRI type drugs that they are prescribed to. We find out that they have, no father figure in their lives. We find out that there are mental issues and problems at home. And these are the things we need to get to the bottom of before we start clamoring down on this gun control issue. We got to look into mental health issues. We've got to look at the antidepressants issues and the fact that they are going to, regardless, jump all over this to try to seize our guns. But really, we need to look at why these kids are getting to this point in the first place, fundamentally. And it starts with health. It starts with mental health. We got to figure out what's going on in that regards before we take away the guns.
Well, I absolutely agree with you. And to the local media's credit, I was watching this live streaming on Facebook, and a lot of the people were making the mental health claims, the non-politicians, actually. And they were saying, obviously, this is a person who was not of sound mind. You wouldn't just do this. Some of the other takeaways that I got from this was there were some eyewitnesses to a fight that went on after he was eliminated from the tournament, got loud. I know the video is available where you literally see people playing their video games. It cuts to the video game screen as their conversation goes streaming live, and you start hearing the horrific shooting. reporting. It suggests that it was not an AR-15. It suggests it was some kind of a semi-automatic, high-magazine pistol, maybe 15 shots. And one of the other things I took away from the news, and, guys, again, I'm just trying to take the raw information and give it to you guys, tell you what I know so far. Who knows what we're going to come across later, but the bomb squad was indeed there, possibly checking out his vehicle and making sure that there wasn't something more planned here. But as you and I discussed just before the show, because, again, this happened maybe 2 hours before the show, I believe we were just getting ready, and I said, we're going to have to cover this as well, is the fact that crazy does exist. Okay, we have to understand that, and that this was a gun-free zone. Okay, so, I don't want to call for mandatory armed guards, but this was a plaza. It seems like there was over 100 people there from the descriptions. It was not only a restaurant, but this gaming event with Madden football was going on. Maybe one armed guard per every 100 people at events isn't a bad idea. I don't want to see the day where I have to go and take my kids to a movie theater where, there's an armed guard in the front of the theater. I think that's an extreme level. But I don't know how many answers we have out there, because with these gun-free zones, you restrict people from having guns who should have them, because I believe it is a carry state. Florida, obviously, you can conceal and carry. And nobody at this event had their conceal and carry. Nobody. And what did we have? We had a ton of victims. And I suspect we're going to have more than 4 deaths here, Dan. So what do you think the solution might be?
Well, I know the solution is not to clamor all down on the guns, and to, like you said, focus on more of the health control issues. And we have to always remember that as far as the deep state is concerned, we know that they operate out of order, out of chaos. We know this is their modus operandi. And as you and I were discussing before the show, sometimes, chaos happens organically. Sometimes they don't need to generate the chaos, but they can, utilize this. They can jump all over these opportunities. And I think this may be one of those cases where it's not necessarily a false flag type event. This could be, the case of just a lone psycho kid who lost it, and had his what do they call it? Went postal moment. These things happen every now and then, but we got to remember that they will try to use these events to get the order out of this chaos that happens. So we're not going to jump all over this screaming false flag. It's literally only been a couple of hours here. We need to look into all the evidence before we say such a thing. But I think this may be a case of they're going to use this as an opportunity to take away people's guns rights, even though it could very well may have been just an organic, lone, crazy incident. These things do happen. Like you said, Jason, crazy exists.
Crazy exists, and I feel like we also live in a society now where we kind of feed the crazy. One of the biggest examples of that would be kind of this incel movement. Are you familiar with it? Where a bunch of bitter people that have now decided that they're basically not even going to try to go out in society and find a partner. They're just never going to meet anybody. They're not going to change their behavior. And I don't want to say this is like the video game culture. Hey, man, I'm a gamer. I enjoy a little Injustice 2, Gods Among Us, great game. I like a little break, Saints Row series, Gears of War. I could name a bunch of them, man. I like blowing off steam. I like the Doom series. I'm psyched there's a sequel. I think it's cool that competitive gaming is actually out there as something that you could aspire to. I wish that was around when I was a kid. My parents were all over me when I was playing Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 for 6 to 10 hours a rip. That wasn't even a thing. So
and it didn't make you violent, I don't think, right?
No. I was no more violent from video games than I was as a little kid. I mean, I guess I grew up in the 80s, which was a different era, where, if somebody talked wrong to you or a bully came up to you, you end up punching them. You weren't worried about their feelings. You were worried about making a statement that you didn't want to get picked on, or, even if you got beat up, it showed that you could stand up for yourself. All those things have kind of gone by the wayside. I don't want to use any cursing or bad language, but it's been the pussification of America. It's there. And, that's not just, and that's not even a masculine thing. Everybody should be standing up for themselves. We as a culture have been conditioned to kind of take this victimhood and like we're the victim. And aside from the fact that I also believe this kid's going to end up being on psychotropics or some kind of drug, we now have this mentality where there's a reason for everything, and you have this entitlement, and you are a victim. And this kid was a loser, and obviously he brought the gun there because he thought that he might. I'm going to get cheated. If I get cheated, boy, you wait till they see. Wait. They want to be mean to me on my online game because this seems like a community. They were speculating whether he was out of state or in state. This seemed like a pretty big tournament. But my point being is there's all these different arenas that will feed into your anger and say it's okay and it's okay and it's okay. And then when people snap like this, politicians go right to the gun control when there's so many other societal issues, mental health issues mostly, that we're never even talking about, we're not addressing. I might trigger people if I dare say the things I just said in a public square, Dan. And I think that's a big problem. I mean, our generation, it was expected by the time you were 12 years old, you probably had a couple fist fights under your belt. That the bigger kids were going to come for you. And then, unless you were the bigger kid, and then you were the crappy kid, and hopefully your parents reined you in. But that was just the way it was. And now, my 7-year-old is in a class with a little boy who dresses like a little girl and has to be addressed as she, and is probably on puberty blockers and all this. It's the most maddening thing. And I'd be a bad guy if I said, I have to talk to her and say, listen, that's still a little boy. There's something going on with her parents. That's not to say that little boy won't be able to grow up, make decisions for themselves, but you can barely decide what kind of bagel you want right now.
Do you want to know how bad it's getting, Jason? In Canada, there's actually something called Bill 89 that was introduced that would seek to give Child Protection Services the ability to take your kid away from you, from the parent, if the parent fails to recognize the preferred gender pronoun of their kid. So if little Sally wants to be called little Billy at age 6 and the parents refuse to do so, under this bill in Canada, Bill 89, if this passes and becomes a law, the government can take your kid away from you for refusing to call him a he instead of a she, Unbelievable that they're literally putting it pen to paper and trying to pass legislation to make it so that, to take away the rights of the parents and try to say that this kid, a 4 or 5-year-old, can decide that they think they're actually a girl instead of a boy. Unreal that they're trying to legislate this into law here in Canada.
That is unreal. And it shows how it's so difficult to parent your child right this way. Not, kids often gravitate towards the positive attention they receive from something. So when I see a little boy in a dress that, thinks he's this and that, I see a parent that's feeding into that. And the thing is that your kids will try things that aren't positive, that you have to give a negative response. And that, I'm not trying to be a bigot or say that, people aren't born a certain sexual preference. That's not what this is about. First of all, you don't even develop, I was probably 11 years old before I even thought about kissing a girl. Maybe I started talking about it at like 10, kind of. But even at that point, they still kind of had cooties. I wasn't worried about, dating. I was in an area close enough to the city where I remember some of the older kids, the 11 and 12-year-olds, were going to a place called Club Soda to socialize, But that was it. And now, I literally, I took my nieces, who I take care of, 7 and 9, to like a daddy-daughter dance where, yes, the parents are there, but they're trying to integrate the kids even then on the dance floor at grade school levels before they even get into junior high school. So, I think, we talked about the normalization of pedophilia. I think the idea of the sexualization of children is beyond doubt. And even our generation started seeing it. It just wasn't that way before, but it's something that is a very, very real thing, Dan. Before I jump to the next subject, and we're going to get back into, basically this country, Trump's presidency, where all that's going, the Manafort, the Cohen, his main advisor flipping all that stuff. But I want to go to Litchgore, loyalty to country always, loyalty to government when it deserves it. Mark Twain, and I totally agree with that. I'm no anarchist. I know Luke's a little bit of an anarchist. I know I had Josh Sigurdson on. Last week, he's a little bit of an anarchist. I like to think that Dan here is a little bit more reasonable. He understands that although government is often an evil, it is a necessary one, as people are people and any institution can cause atrocities. Hell, think about what we've discussed here today. A lot of it had nothing to do with government. Maybe the McCain stuff, but when we were talking about the church, we're talking about different entities. So, limited government, accountability. That's why this constitutional republic, at least in my country, used to be great, because we had a thing called checks and balances. It was the judicial, it was the executive, it was the legislative branch. We didn't live in a national security state where you could just say, again, national security, NSA, Homeland Security, top secret, and then you couldn't get into it. That's not how this country was founded. So we're so far away from what our original forefathers thought our country would be. And that's what I fight to try to take back. That's why I'm a constitutionalist. All right, speaking of the Constitution, I would doubt that our forefathers would want to be going after the President of the United States, who has been treated like no other president in history in the media. And that's, again, and the thing is, when he deserves to be ridiculed on things like Syria, he's not. Mm-hmm. They're saying bomb, bomb, bomb away. Okay? But when it's about two basically overpriced prostitutes, one of which had sex for money many times on video and still does to this day, and another playboy playmate who obviously sugar daddied herself out to many a wealthy man, who both took money to keep their mouths shut about a Trump peni in their low sty, and he paid with it his own money. We all knew when we elected Trump that he was a womanizer. He was on wife number 3. He cheated on Ivana with Marla Maples. He cheated on Marla Maples with everybody, including his current wife. And he ran beauty pageants. We all knew it. We knew what he was. We thought, you lefties out there, you liberals, you Trump haters out there for no reason, you Trump derangement syndrome people that don't want to talk about real issues with Trump, and we got 1,000 of them. Get John Bolton out of there. Are you kidding me? I don't want that war hawk anywhere near the president. Get Mattis out of there. I don't want that war hawk anywhere near the president. That's not what the media wants to trumpet them. They want to trumpet people like John Brennan and Michael Hayden, all these other warmongers that have been around for years, the Robert Muellers of the world that covered up 9/11, that pushed the Iraq war. They love them, okay? But they want to go after Trump for a couple of prostitutes. They get Manafort on a tax case, 8 out of 18 charges. They get Cohen to plead the same day after illegally going into his office and taking everything they wanted. And now they flipped his financial advisor. And by the way, Giuliani, who I am absolutely no fan of, says that Trump's just going to pardon Manafort anyway, or could. And I think he can. I mean, I wouldn't even be mad at him about that. I'm sure. Let me give you an example. I actually had one of my college buddies. I'd call him buddy. He's in my fraternity. Never really that friendly with him. Anyway, big lefty. He's like, we now have this generation's Oliver North. Hashtag Manafort. And I'm thinking to myself, well, absolutely not. Manafort never worked for the government. Oliver North ran cocaine for the CIA and the deep state from South America in a gun-running deal, admitted to it, said that he was ordered to do everything he did and did not go to jail. Instead, he got TV and book deals and now heads the NRA. Okay? No, Manafort never worked for the government, worked on a campaign he shouldn't have, that got accused of Russian collusion, which was imagination land, went to trial for tax fraud from over a decade ago, and is going to jail. They're not even close to similar. Dan, take it away.
Oh, man. I see a lot of this stuff, Jason, as a pretty big distraction, especially the prostitute stuff, Trump's like, sexual background. Did he say the N-word? All these, it's all these petty little distraction things to make it seem like, people are really investigating this guy. We're really trying to find out, when meanwhile, there's much bigger issues and important things to worry about here. So to be honest, when I see this, the stuff about the Russian hacking and, the dossier and the memo and, Mueller and all these guys, I don't really look into it a whole lot, to be honest. I see it as somewhat of a distraction, and I think there's bigger things at play here that we need to worry about. What's happening in the Middle East. What's happening with the economy. What's going to happen under the scenario of a dollar crash. Under Trump or something of that scenario. I think there's bigger fish to fry here, as it were, and I think that's why the mainstream media pays so much attention into these things. But whether or not he slept with these prostitutes, what is it, 10 years ago or whatever, who cares? I mean, it's a pretty big distraction in my mind.
Absolutely. And the other factor in this to me is no one's talking about Yemen and the fact that he signed a $400+ billion arms deal with Saudi Arabia, and the bombs that are hitting them are basically Trump bombs, Trump-approved Raytheon bombs, and we're picking the targets, and the military's completely involved. And on MSN, they did over 400 stories on Stormy Daniels last year. They did none on Yemen. The guy can open up the embassy in Jerusalem, in Israel, make it the capital against the wishes of almost the rest of the Middle East. 70 protesters plus, including medics, can be brutally slaughtered on live television on the Gaza Strip as him and his family smile, and the media doesn't say a word. There's nothing there. But now, it's Stormy time, baby. And, in the comments here, I want to be fair. I see a lot of people saying, well, they went after Bill Clinton for Monica Lewinsky. A lot of people want to forget that. That's not true. Let's go over what they actually did. They went after the Clintons for Whitewater, which was an absolute real scandal. You look at those people, you look at the Vince Fosters of the world, you look at the Webb Hubbles that testified. Webb Hubble looks a lot like Chelsea Clinton. I don't know. She doesn't look a lot like Bill. Look up Webb Hubble. You tell me that. You just look up the Webster, okay? Clinton went on tape and perjured himself about Monica Lewinsky. He actually took the bait, and he went and he testified. Trump has yet to take any bait whatsoever. Well, to his credit, that would be his undoing. They sit him down. It does not matter what they ask him. He's a born liar. I'm not disputing that. All of these guys are. They're all born liars. They will catch him on a lie, and yes, then we can compare it to the Clintons. But don't tell me that this is the same thing as Bill Clinton, because Bill Clinton, all right, Bill Clinton moved on after. He was a very slick guy. Hey, listen, at the time the economy was rocking. He was playing the saxophone. The internet was a shell of its former self. I didn't want to believe all these rumors of sexual abuse. It seemed pretty obvious to me that, he was obviously out doing blow with Jennifer Flowers back in the day in Arkansas. But what did I care? Right? We had a hip president for the first time. Gas was 99 cents a gallon, if you could believe that, guys. It was 99 cents, sometimes lower. You couldn't, dude, it was a magical time for Jason Bermas pre-21 and Bill Clinton. And I thought to myself at the same time, I didn't want to see him get impeached for that. But again, to call the two situations any kind of same is totally ludicrous in my mind.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, and it's all probably by design as a distraction. And when these things are going on, we need to look beyond the smoke and mirrors and start asking the question, okay, what are they hiding from us right now? What is some of the more important things going on in the world, like Yemen, like the takeover of the Middle East, that we need to focus on here, and always remember that it's not necessarily the man himself, but it's the deep state at play here. So we can't lose sight of that. We always got to continue to keep the focus and pin the blame on where it ought to lie, which is the deep state, the secret government, those who are behind the scenes, the puppet string pullers, as I call them.
And Dan, this has been a pretty Russia-heavy broadcast, but why? Well, again, it seems because of this kind of deep state program to associate Trump with Russia when it never really happened, as we had even more evidence this week coming from Julian Assange's mother that the DNC leak was indeed Seth Rich. And she tweeted this out and then erased it when she was asked this question. I understand your vehement point, but why did Julian publish damning docs against Hillary at such a crucial time, which gave Humpty Dumpty Trump the upper hand. And this was Assange's mother's response. It's the duty of the media to inform citizens about corruption. A DNC Bernie supporter disgruntled with rigging leaked docs proving corruption. What should WikiLeaks have done? Hold on to them until after the election to advantage Hillary? You are shooting the messenger. So there it is. There she claims again, Dan, and again she deleted it. These aren't Russian hacks. This is DNC. We have Seymour Hersh on a secretly recorded conversation saying that Seth Rich had a Dropbox, had sold documents to WikiLeaks, had given them access. Everything points to Seth Rich. We have the Donna Brazil quotes in her books, and yet this is ignored by the mainstream media and people like myself that dare mention it. Conspiracy theorist or Russian agent, Dan?
I think it was also Assange himself, not only his mother. I think he alluded to it basically once in an interview.
Yes, he did.
And the interviewer called him on it. He was like, "Are you? You're basically saying that was him, right?" And when you watch that interview, it's clear that he is saying that, yeah, it didn't come from where you thought it came from, and this guy gave me this,
And he's always said, he's been adamant it was not a Russian leak. And what he said is there are consequences to sharing information. And he basically says, wait, are you referring to, this being Seth Rich? And he's like, we do not give up our sources. That's it. And it seems after this, everything has gone over the top. And there has been this concerted effort to take Trump down. Okay, again, I'm not saying that he's not in the pocket of these people foreign policy-wise. He really does seem to be. But, again, he got rid of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. He's not in line with them with Obamacare and so many other issues that Hillary would have just parroted along and the media would have told us all what a great job she's doing. She does a great job. Oh, best woman president ever. First woman history's being made twice in a row. First black man president and now the first women. 32 years of just greatness. Oh my goodness, it's just going to keep rolling after these 16 Hillary and Obama, and then we'll probably get another Bush or whatever. I'm glad. Listen, say what you want about Trump. He's not perfect. But he also gives hope to an actual third-party candidate that may be even more pro-people at being able to get elected. This guy was very smart and calculated. I think he used his celebrity. Roger Stone, not a dumb man. They used InfoWars, which, people were not giving them credit for the reach that they had. And those were the two major parts of the election. That's it. People don't realize most people that watch professional wrestling and believe it's real don't vote. Well, they voted this time, okay? They voted this time. This is a guy that's been with the WWE forever. I mean, from the 80s, he was a wrestling personality. A lot of people watched that stupid Apprentice show and loved it. You're fired!
Yeah.
You're fired! We're going to get the you're fired guy in the White House? Oh, baby. America is going to be great again. So while all this is going on in the background, people want to say he's an idiot. He's not an idiot. He's a really smart guy. He's a really smart guy. Michael Moore is also a really smart guy. And that's why you're not hearing about this in the media as they're starting to promote Fahrenheit 11/9, his sequel to Fahrenheit 9/11. Side note, I don't know if you saw this yet, Dan, but John Brennan was hamming it up with Bill Maher last night. And he decided to call the Trump presidency the third great crisis in America. I believe after, I'm not sure if it was World War II and 9/11, but it was up there.
Oh.
It was up there. He's the third great crisis. No one's pointing to the fact this movie coming out was produced by Harvey Weinstein. They tried to kind of brush this under the rug. Oh, me too? Yes, you too, Mike. Harvey
so what
Weinstein.
Are they just gonna try to keep that under the wraps?
It's over because basically they've said that his production company has disbanded. Michael Moore in some of his tweets were talking about Harvey Weinstein's actually one of the nicest guys to work for in Hollywood. That's the big secret.
Right.
Oh, he's one of the nicest guys. The man who's relieving himself sexually on plants while cornering women in the hallway. That's the Hollywood nice guy. Well, thank you so much, Michael. Your integrity is through the roof. It's through the roof, Mr. Moore.
Mm-hmm.
Again, let's talk about this. Right before the broadcast, I was saying we were going to go over this story, and you were like, wait a minute, is that true? And now you're saying, well, how are they going to keep this under wraps? And they already have. The movie's launching soon. I mean, it launches, I believe, in the beginning of September, right? It's a couple weeks away. There's no mainstream press whatsoever talking about Moore's association with Weinstein and Weinstein's association with this film. Doesn't matter that Weinstein is on camera with the Clintons all over the place throughout 2017 before this broke. Doesn't matter that Harvey Weinstein was the personal projectionist of Bill Clinton through his presidency and traveled with him on vacation. None of that matters. None of that matters. We got to get Trump out of office. It's the third greatest crisis in American history, Dan.
Yeah. You know what I wouldn't be surprised is that what their go-to secret weapon might be to so-called get him out of there, knowing the way they operate. And knowing, I've seen pictures of this person with Harvey Weinstein, and I would not be surprised to see this, Jason, if we actually saw a 2020 run against Donald Trump and, believe it or not, yes, Oprah Winfrey. Because, look, that would be it would be entertaining for the American people. Like they would enjoy watching a reality television star go up against another reality television star. She's friends with Weinstein. She's got a lot of things going for her. She's black. She's a woman. She's perfect for the stage theater show that is the American presidential selection process. So I would not be surprised if we saw someone like an Oprah Winfrey announce. She said she's not going to, but they always say that. Eventually announce that she's going to run, and that be the big spectacle in 2020. What do you think? Could you see that as a possibility for the 2020 campaign?
I think her especially, they'd have to really have something on her that they threatened her with, because I don't think she wants her name dragged through the mud. I think it's pretty obvious she's had a pretty unconventional relationship with Desmond. We all have our skeletons in our closet. You can't have that kind of money and power without making some mistakes. I think that she's aware enough about that. And I think that, in the back of her mind, she's also looked at Trump, and whether she likes him or not, she probably has known him just like all these other people through social circles throughout the years, and been like, man, he was busy and had a lot going on then, but look at him now. This poor bastard. I don't know if I want to do that. Maybe I'll just have my nice little network and do my nice little thing and not come under this kind of scrutiny. Because, hey, man, the Cernoviches of the world are out there. They might get you. It's a day and age where if you're a bad person, you might wake up the next day and be a couple hours behind the social media curve where you've finally been vilified for your actions. And that's the bottom line. So I think they're sweating now, because I don't think they have a big enough name. And, again, a lot of these people on both the left, the right, Democrat, Republican, they're owned by the same lobbyists, the same interests. It's certainly the case when you look at, a country like Israel. It's certainly the case almost throughout the entire Middle East. Saudi Arabia, there aren't any Democrats going out there, that $400+ billion arms deal with Saudi Arabia is a bad move. How many Democrats or Republicans are even talking about that bus bombing? Nobody. And that was one of 50 civilian targets just in the prior 6 months. We covered that a couple weeks ago here. It's unfathomable and unbelievable. So I don't know if they have that face. I think they're trying to build that politician. I think that Hickenlooper fellow is someone that they might try to run. They have that private businessman that's run the campaign ads against Trump. They might try to get him in there. They've seen the businessman president sell, but what they don't understand, and I don't understand why they don't get it, is it wasn't any of that stuff. That was part of the equation, but just like I said, the things that sent him over the top were his past audiences on television. Wrestling is huge, man. That is a die-hard audience, and like I said, I can't tell you how many people cheered for days when Donald Trump went in there and rock bottomed somebody. They don't forget that stuff.
Yeah.
So, who is the Democratic equivalent? I don't know that there is one that is politically savvy enough to come out of nowhere and take them on. So I think they're trying to basically, Cory Booker. He's another one. I don't think he's ready for the presidency yet, but would Cory Booker maybe be a vice presidential candidate under somebody a little bit more established? They're trying to sell us a lot of things. I don't know. I would say watch the television for the next 6 months and see who gets the most play that's been in a political position for 5 or more years. And that may be the person that they run down. That's just my opinion. Folks, I want to remind you, we are taking your super chats first. And Steve, there we go. Let's see. Forget this channel. Luke called me a blah, blah, blah. And I emailed them and I gave you a blah, blah, blah before. Calling out that, oh, jeez, man. Just the hate. the hate. And now it's the reptilians. Oh, guys, why are we devolving in the chat room? We had such a nice little chat going on. People are actually into the conversation about what we're talking about.
It's not a good show, Jason, until we get the Zionist Jew accusations thrown around.
And the thing is that we've talked about Israel and I guess not Zionism by name, but hey, why not? Let's talk about Zionism right now, because there's so many different levels of Zionism for the people in the chat room. I'm just going to address the real stuff and the fake stuff, and then the masking of anti-Semitism, which, I'm sorry, some of you in the chat room, that's exactly what this is. First of all, Zionism itself was the idea that Israel should exist. And after that existence came into fruition after World War II, then you can argue a little bit more, what is Zionism? Now, is Zionism just being pro-Israel, saying it should exist, or is Zionism taking the position that Israel does every single time? That's also very, very debatable. Now, I don't think that Israel is evil every single time out there. However, I don't like how they treat Palestinians. I do believe what they have over there is apartheid. I agree with Jimmy Carter's assessment from his book, Palestine, Peace, Not Apartheid. They have not lived up to their agreements on where the settlements were going to be and the agreed upon lines. Had they done that, all 23 Middle Eastern nations would have agreed on their right to exist. Now we have the super Zionism angle, okay? The super Zionism angle is that you believe this stuff. You think your savior is going to come in and that the Goyim are going to be your slaves and that you're going to rebuild the temple. You're going to rebuild Solomon's temple after you take out the Dome of the Rock. That scares me. Why would I be for that? Obviously, the Dome of the Rock's not going anywhere on its own. It would be some kind of an awful event, a military strike, and even after that, it would have to be overtaken by Israel itself to gain that land and rebuild. So then you have your Christian Zionists that believe all that and want to help it come along. Why? Because they want their savior to come back after, apparently, this guy who rebuilds the temple and becomes the ruler, reveals himself after some time of peace and bringing the lands together to be Satan, apparently. Apparently that's Lucifer, and then Jesus Christmas comes back and the rest of Revelations goes down. I gotta tell you, I'm skeptical on all of it. I don't base my political beliefs and policy on religion. And again, when I sit here and I criticize the president for doing nothing as Palestinians are slaughtered on the Gazan line, as Jerusalem is made the capital, I think that's something much more relevant to discuss than the religious beliefs that have been around for thousands of years that some of you think control every single policy in the world for almost 8 billion people. Because that's not how the world works. Don't get me wrong. Things get swayed. But I'm always going to be honest with you guys. With that being said, Liberty Craze says, keep up the good work. What's up, Dan? Dana Koss. You know Dana?
Hey. Yeah, what's up?
Very nice.
He's coming back.
Yeah, no, I don't think your super chat was hate, man. I'm not even sure which one that you're referring to. I don't think, again, when you talk about Zionist Jews, right? I'm sure there are many Zionist Jews out there that are in the United States, don't want any kind of military conflict, but just believe that their quote-unquote Zionism is a support for Israel. Again, I live in New York. I see people go to Israel all the time, especially in a college town. A lot of these kids, they do. They make their trip to Israel because Israel pays for it. So I've known many people that have spent a week out there and come back, and I don't look at them funny. I don't think that they have any kind of like political malice. I don't think that they want to rule over me because I'm not Jewish. Okay, I get it. I don't like any type of supremacy, but I don't dwell on it. I don't dwell on white supremacy, black supremacy, racial supremacy, religious supremacy. It's nonsense. At the end of the day, there's good and there's evil, and there's groups within, or people within just about every group that are capable of that evil and that good. Again, any kind of organization that builds itself up, Dan, tends to become corrupt, and you cannot take the actions of a few and generalize across a broad spectrum that encompasses literally millions of human beings. Before we get into the latest on the Catholic abuse, what are your take on all this? Because I know that you get the same stuff in your chats as well.
Oh yeah, I get it all the time. Have probably since I started the channel, believe it or not. And it's something that a lot of people say, oh, if you guys shy away from this talk, then you must be a part of that, or you must be a part of this. I don't shy away from that. I have lots of videos where I talk about Zionism. I talk about Israel versus Palestine. I got videos on that. What I say to a lot of these people? They often say it about Alex Jones. Hey, he doesn't talk about this or that. It's like, you know what? You could talk about it. What's stopping you from starting a YouTube channel and your own website and your own blog and putting yourself out there and talking about it? Wait, you can do that. So, I often just say, hey, man, if you want to, let's see what you have to say about that, my friend. But I don't shy away from talking about these things. But there's a time and a place for everything, and I think there is a time to discuss more religious ideas, but it's not for everyone. It's not all the time, and obviously here in the chats, people can get out of hand and get really ridiculous. So I tend to just ignore a lot of that myself, Jason.
Well, Dan, you froze up again, so I'm going to have you call back. We're going to finish up on this issue and then finish up on the other side. Call me right back on Skype, my man.
Okay.
So Dan will be right back. And again, I just want to reiterate this. This is stuff that I've been talking about now for well over a decade. None of this is new for me, okay? I've had this same position for well over a decade. I've been accused of covering up 9/11 and not talking about Israeli involvement. Guys, Fabled Enemies is on its almost 10th anniversary this year, this September 11th, and there is a 20-minute section in it about Israeli involvement. So a lot of these people have no idea. They get into these groups, they hear something on a video, they're angry, they're lonely, they're part of that community that I talked about before, but instead of lashing out, thank God, by taking somebody's life, they're keyboard warriors of ignorance in the comments section. So, with that being said, I want to move on from the topic and talk about this one right here, where you have a cardinal discussing this this big revelation in Pennsylvania we talked about, saying that the abuse victims should be ashamed to speak about their abuse because of their own failings. And this is just disturbing, man. This is the kind of culture of silence. When I did that little mini doc, the Monsters Among Us doc, when they were actually in London, it's not even really a doc, it's just a video. But when I did the video, the Orthodox Jewish group in London, there was hidden video of the rabbi saying, who's screaming? Is that you?
Oh, sorry, I'm outside. There's kids all of a sudden now.
No. I was just wondering if I was hearing things and it was the kids, my kids downstairs, or my nieces, or rather. But, okay.
Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. But the point is, he goes in there and the rabbi immediately says, no, this isn't something for the police. They're always trying to keep this quiet, and they've been very successful. And this shows that culture. This guy is unabashed about this. It's shameless. This man is a disgusting human being, whether he's abused children or not. He is fed into the culture that covers up sexual predators of children, and he should be in prison. It makes me ill.
So am I hearing this correctly that people are making accusations against the Catholic Church about sexual violations, and then he is turning around and saying that they need to keep quiet?
Yes.
Is
He
that?
is saying because of their own sins, they should be shamed, and that here it is right here. I'll read the first paragraph. Reacting to the recent avalanche of reports of clerical sexual abuse around the world, a newly minted Mexican cardinal has suggested that the victims who accuse priests should be ashamed because they too have skeletons in their own closet. Those who accuse men of the church should be careful because they have long tails that are easily stepped on. Excuse me? And this is
Wow.
Sergio Obeso Rivera. And he is a high-level cardinal in the Catholic Church. This shows the culture hasn't changed at all, man. It hasn't changed at all. It doesn't matter how many priests had to resign in Chile, over 30. They should be in jail. They shouldn't be able to resign. These monsters need to be taken to prison, put there, and the keys locked. Let prison justice take care of them. And I'm not calling for their violence. I'm saying, hey, they should not be enjoying the freedom that, regular human beings do, because these aren't regular human beings. They are predators. That's it.
Well, I wonder how high this is going to go. If this is going to go right on up to the highest of the Vatican, and if Francis himself is going to have to respond to this one. And if it does get to that point, maybe it's time we start looking into Francis himself. I mean, the head. Let's get to the horse's mouth, the head of the movement, the head of the figure, the Pope himself. Perhaps it's time to uncover the skeletons in Francis's closet.
I'm with you 1,000%. Remember, these skeletons run deep. It's not just amongst the Catholic Church. This is a story that I missed from a couple weeks ago. Mark Minnie, who is a co-author of the book The Lost Boys of Bird Island, found dead, bullet in his head. Okay, and this guy co-authored a book on the abuse of children amongst political elites in South Africa. So once again, you have a guy that's exposing this stuff. You look at the police chief that exposed David Heath in the UK. He's gotten so much flack for that. Instead of the media saying, oh my God, what else have you uncovered? They're constantly questioning whether it's real or not. Well, do you think it's real when the lead investigator in the Seville case, Operation U-Tree, comes out and says an ex-prime minister is a serial pedophile? What's the question? What do you think, he just came up with that on his own? No, he's a police chief. You saw the same thing during the late 80s, early 90s in this country with the Franklin scandal, where Barney Frank got caught with his male aide running a house of call boys out of his apartment next to Chevy Chase High School, and it happened that the principal of that high school was also involved and getting prostitutes there in the high school. These were front page stories. And it's a carefully crafted hoax, Jason. That's what Wikipedia says. Wikipedia told me it's a carefully crafted hoax. And the thing is that a lot of that stuff was on the right-hand side. It was the Republicans. It was the conservatives, because this isn't a left or right issue. You will remember Dennis Hastert, the longest-serving speaker in the House, the third heartbeat away from the president, molesting kids as he was a high school gym teacher / coach. Do you think he ever stopped? He was called a serial child molester, never brought on any charges. Forget about being convicted of child abuse or sexual abuse against children. He was never even charged. Okay, and then you have somebody come out after it comes out that this is actually going on. Do you think he stopped when he went into government, when he became the third most powerful government official in the country? You think he wasn't delving into that? You think there might have been a reason that he blocked the investigation into Tom Foley, who later got caught sexting 15-year-old pages in D.C.? Remember that one? Think there might have been a connection there? I mean, give me a break, man. And that's on the right-hand side. And guess whose emails he's in? Old Denny Hassard in the Podesta emails. Good old John Podesta. Going to have some entertainment at a farm in a heated pool by a 7, 9, and 11-year-old. That sounds normal. That sounds great. He's walking around. I guess, Dan, after my little rant there, the abuse of children is so in our face and so rampant, and our culture just continually denies it and would rather stick to a Me Too hashtag. I mean, do we just need to come up with a cooler hashtag so that people realize the severity of the situation?
Well, they'll start to get it soon enough. I would hope so. Anyways, as it continues to become a little bit more mainstream, I suppose. And a lot of people have made the claim that Trump himself is secretly going after the pedophile networks and things of that nature. I hope to God that that's actually true. I don't know if it is, but it does seem that some things are happening behind the scenes, like these top level cardinals and guys in the Vatican are starting to get ousted. Some of the top Hollywood names are being ousted. So maybe things are starting to happen behind the scenes, and that's really, really, really good that we're at least moving in the right direction, where some of these monsters are starting to be exposed. But yeah, as for the whole hashtag Me Too thing. I mean, I don't know if you knew, here in Canada, um, our Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was all over that, at the time, saying, "Believe women, you have to believe women." And now he himself is being accused of a reporter, sexually abusing a reporter. And now he's switching his tune, saying, "Oh, hey, we believe it on a case by case basis, basically." So yes, it runs rampant. It's not just in America; it's in Canada. It's all over the world, but. I just hope that more of it is actually being exposed behind the scenes, and I think it is. We're starting to see it, and hopefully we see more of it.
And let's not forget, Bourdain's ex-girlfriend, who was one of the accusers of Weinstein, has just been outed as grooming a teenager, having sex with a 17-year-old. There's no new hashtag for her. And, I'm not defending Harvey Weinstein by any means, but we've seen some of these emails now. And a lot of these emails that are accusing him of rape or calling him baby and daddy well after these rapes occurred, which shows how perverse the Hollywood culture is and how desperate these actors and actresses are for not only attention, but fame and fortune. They are willing to sleep with a literal human version of Jabba the Hutt. If you have a side-by-side of Jabba and Harvey, you think to yourself, cousins. There's no way. They look almost exactly alike. And I'm sorry, I know that people are into different things. I just don't know who's sexually attracted to Harvey Weinstein. I mean, you tell me. Ladies, if you're out there, hit me in the DMs, because I've got to be looking better than Harvey. All right. All right. That being said, one more article here. This one's The Sun, but it's out of the Washington Post. Yes, Facebook has a trust rating from 0 to 1 for all their users. You can't access it. There are a plethora of different criteria that we don't know about, but it's beyond your posts, your frequency of posts, your comments, your friends' friends. Twitter is mentioned in this article as well. We know that Facebook and Twitter just met over the weekend so they could make sure those pesky Russians don't get involved in our election, our midterm. It's so important. But the real importance is, if they get Democrats in this midterm, they'll be able to impeach Trump for sleeping with hookers and paying them. That's what this is all really about. This is about silencing not only conservative voices, but independent voices. And you heard it here. You have a trust score, and you don't get to find out what it is. It's kind of like that secret social credit score in China. Definitely a slippery slope, Dan.
Yeah, the Sesame credit, as they call it in China, it looks to be the potential blueprint for what we're going to see here. And, one small example of where this can go awry, is look at the blueprint. What happens over there? Well, there was a Chinese man who was denied flying on a flight because he didn't pay for a couple of certain bills. And it turns out that they sent him the notice that he didn't pay, and they got lost in the mail. It turns out he had moved, yada, 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 different address. He never did get the notice, so he was unaware that he had even missed any bills, and he didn't find out about it until he showed up at the airport one day and it was on a no-fly list. because they said your social credit score says you didn't pay these bills and therefore you can't fly today. And it was a harsh, brutal awakening for that man to see just the Orwellian Big Brother surveillance system that he was in, and he just woke up to it one day. That's what that's what this article, that's what I take away from this article, is that's what we're leading towards here, is this Sesame credit blueprint system that they have in China, where if they want to decide that you're not playing along with the system, you're not going along with the status quo, you're challenging things in any sort of way, well, they can flip the switch and essentially cut you off from being able to take part in the system, meaning buy groceries, go to the hospital, do anything. They can essentially cut you off. And that's the nightmarish Orwellian future that they want to develop and create. And that's the scary thing here. Just look to China. If you want to see the blueprint for how the surveillance control grid is going to be and this social credit system, check out Sesame Credit in China. That's where it's heading here.
And the big thing about this is the next step in the track trace database society that I've been talking about for well over a decade, where everything that you do online is digitally cataloged, and it's not even that anymore, okay? With ACR technology, with the fact that your phone's microphone, your TV's microphone is always on, those keywords are also being logged. You have your geolocator on. Google has now admitted even when you turn it off, they're taking some of that geotagging data. Therefore, if you have your phone on you, you are being followed at that very moment. So now we are literally at a moment in time where our movements are being tracked, traced, and databased, whether we like it or not, if we want the luxury of a cell phone on us, which is 99.9% of the developed world. We are here. This is not news. And aside from even being able to travel on a plane, we're also talking about the restrictions on trains as well. We're also talking about restrictions on the internet. He talked about how some people could no longer access the internet if their social credit score was so long. So now you've essentially made me a slave in my own country for committing no crime other than expressing myself. The person in question in this piece was actually a journalist who had written something that the government did not approve of, was forced to write an apology letter, which he did. They didn't think the apology letter was sincere enough, and nothing was changed whatsoever. Well, I've got news for you. Jason Bermas is going to have a real tough time writing an apology letter for telling the truth. You can kiss my big, fat keister before that's happening. And that is where we're sliding, okay? Cut my internet off, mother trucker. I'm going to figure it out. I won't stand for it. I haven't been trained to be a slave where I walk down the street and I'm a jaywalker and all of a sudden I get a fine on my telephone and I'm publicly shamed. That's what this is about. And we're so close to that. With the implementation of 5G nationally and then internationally, it's going to be hard to run from. So we better speak up now as more and more people. Hell, there's an article this week on those idiots in Wisconsin, 3 Market Square, that all took little chips in their hands and they love it and they're happy to do it. Well, I reported that last year. And you see, it's not news, but about a year later, they tell you how happy everybody it is and how it's working out and how it's great. That's how they're programming you. That's how they're getting you ready. It makes me ill. Speak to that. Speak to the predictive programming that we've all been under through media and through and I'm not only talking about the news media, through our television, through movies, through popular culture, Dan. Go ahead.
Well, just look what they just did to Alex Jones. I mean, love him or hate him, regardless of what you think of the man and his opinions and the way he expresses them, the fact of the matter is the big tech companies colluded and they decided to essentially cut off his voice from the internet. So when you have Google and Apple and Spotify and all these guys doing this together, that's clear coercion. And like I said, regardless of what you feel about the man, it doesn't matter. The fact is, this is the stage that we're at in the New World Order. I mean, it's 2018. And it's actually to the point where they can memory hole somebody. So we're like, it's here. I mean, the Big Brother Orwellian surveillance grid is here. The system is in place to the point where they can shut somebody off. They just did it. And again, I often quote this famous quote. I think it was Chomsky. I'm not even a fan of Chomsky. It's still a good quote. Is that, if you don't believe in the freedom of speech for even those who you despise, then you don't believe in it at all. I think that is absolutely true and fundamental right now today. And so, seeing what happened to Alex Jones should be sending alarm bells off in people's minds and going, "Oh my God, we're here. It's the 1984 Orwellian nightmare. It's the New World Order system. We're living in it, guys. So the time to get involved in this fight is now, before it's not even going to be possible anymore. So if you're watching this broadcast and you're on the fence about maybe getting involved in this movement, do it now before it's too late, because they're starting to shut guys like us off left, right, and center now.
It's absolutely true. Again, and when they can't shut us down, they'll just run an algorithm so we get less and less reach. And you better believe that's happened. We have more followers than ever. Luke Rudowski went out there in Portland. I know you were covering it and you were one of the top guys, but Luke had over 8,000 plus live streamers watching him.
Yeah.
Demonetized out of the gates. I know that you had several thousand yourself. I think Jake Lloyd was somewhere running in there, and Tim Pool. But we had a tremendous reach. We did get some good subscribers out of there. But as soon as that live stream was over, everything was done. I mean, out of the gates, every single one of our videos is demonetized. For instance, my John McCain memorial. Now, we got 528,000 subscribers. I think that's about a third to a fourth of what your CNNs, your Fox Newses have, the 1.5 to 3 point whatever million, okay? My video, out of the gates, had 3 to 6,000 in the first 20, 40 minutes. I was right up there with CNN and every other video talking about John McCain's death. However, when I go to a computer where I'm not logged into Google as anybody, so there's no algorithm to run, and I type in John McCain dies, I'm nowhere in there. Nowhere in there. And it took till today, right before this broadcast, 23 hours for it to get monetized after 16,000 plus views. How is that an equal playing field? It's simply not. It's absolutely ridiculous. And we got to realize we're not on that playing field. And yes, we are diversifying. We're on BitChute. We're on DLive. We're on DTube. We're trying. But the numbers aren't there. And if you put me in a public square where my algorithm is the same as MSNBC and the liars at Fox News, I promise you I will crush them every single time. Last super chat before we wrap it up. Nicholas Peter, thank you so much for all the support today, guy. I really appreciate it. On the subject of 5G, what are your guys' thoughts on Oregon Energy and William Reich and the ability to Oregon to filter the EMF radiation? You know what? I know little to nothing about that. I did do a short 5G documentary kind of explaining the different bandwidths and why 5G isn't really just one thing, and how it's a multitude of technologies. And I know there's a lot of scares out there that it may cause cancer. And by the way, there are some studies that it penetrates the skin much deeper than 4G or 3G technology, other types of radiation, or Wi-Fi, for instance. So if you want to see my thoughts on what I know about 5G, it's called the 5G Controversy Explained. I encourage you to check it out. Dan, wrap it up for me. Where can people check out your stuff? How can they help you out with Press for Truth, my man?
Oh yeah, definitely subscribe to me here on YouTube. That's the best way. That's where everything goes up first and foremost. YouTube.com/Weaving Spider is actually the channel, but if you just type in Press for Truth, you will find me there. And then of course the website is pressfortruth.ca. We are also on DTube, and you can find me there on Steemit, steemit.com/@pressfortruth. And yeah, those are the main ones. Definitely go to YouTube, go to Steemit, and the pressfortruth.ca is the main website as well.
All right, Dan, thank you so much for joining me. And guys, thank you so much for joining me the last couple weeks, and probably next week too, as Luke is on the road. We'll probably have another guest, hopefully as good as Dan. But again, kudos to Dan. Dan, and I have so much respect for the guy. He's been around forever. His work is great. You're not going to be upset if you subscribe to his stuff, because honestly, he does some of the best work out there, not only in the alternative media, but the media realm in general. So folks, remember to be the change you want to see in the world.